வங்கிக் கடன் விகிதங்கள் குறித்து ரிசர்வ் வங்கி ஆளுநர் திரு சக்தி காந்த தாஸ் முக்கிய தகவல்களை வெளியிட்டு வருகிறார். அதன் நேரலையை தற்போது காண்போம்.
And the 4.1% and the 4% in Q3 and Q4 of this year are primarily due to base effects. We can explain in more detail during the press conference, which will come up at 12 p.m. Inflation. Now let me focus on inflation. June 2022 was the 6th consecutive month when headline CPI inflation remained at or above the upper tolerance level of 6%. Looking ahead, the inflation trajectory continues to be heavily contingent upon the evolving geopolitical developments, international commodity market dynamics, global financial market developments, and the spatial and temporal distribution of the southwest monsoon. Since the last MPC meeting, however, there has been some let-up in global commodity prices, particularly in the prices of industrial metals, and also some softening in global food prices. Domestic edible oil prices are expected to soften further on the back of improving supplies from key producing countries and government's supply-side measures. The resumption of wheat supply from the Black Sea region, which happened a couple of days ago, if it sustains, could help to temper international prices of wheat. Supply chain pressures, though elevated, are on an easing trajectory. Further, the advance of the southwest monsoon is by and large on track, and Kharif sowing has picked up in recent weeks. The shortfall in Kharif sowing of paddy, however, needs to be watched closely. Although the huge buffer stocks that are available are, will provide some kind of moderating impact on possible inflation. Household inflation expectations have eased, but they still remain elevated. Incidence of unseasonal and excessive rainfall, if any, can impact food prices, especially the prices of vegetables. Greater transmission of input cost pressures to selling prices across manufacturing and services sectors may also create fresh price pressures. Moreover, persistently elevated cost of living conditions could translate to higher wages and further price increases, especially if pricing power of firms strengthen. Taking into account these factors and on the assumption of a normal monsoon in 2022 and average crude oil price, that is Indian basket of $105 per barrel, inflation is projected at 6.7% in 2022-23, that is the current year, with Q2 at 7.1%, Q3 at 6.4%, and Q4 at 5.8%, with risks evenly balanced. CPI inflation for the first quarter of next financial year 2023-24 is projected at 5%. The inflation trajectory is now poised at a decisive point. While there are incipient signs of a confluence of factors that could lead to further softening of domestic inflationary pressures, there remain significant uncertainties. In such a milieu, with growth momentum expected to be resilient despite headwinds from the external sector, monetary policy should persevere further in its stance of withdrawal of accommodation to ensure that inflation moves close to the target of 4% over the medium term, while of course supporting growth. A calibrated approach would provide sufficient flexibility to monetary policy in the current uncertain environment. I would now like to turn to liquidity and financial market conditions. The introduction of the standing deposit facility, that is SDF, in April this year, which raised the floor of the liquidity adjustment facility corridor, that is the LAF corridor, by 40 basis points, along with policy repo rate hikes of May and June, have effectively resulted in withdrawal of accommodation by 30 basis points. Consequently, the weighted average call rate, that is WACR, which is the operating target of monetary policy, has commensurately firmed up.